Hi, I'm Jeff Gonzalez, president of Trident Concepts, and today I'm here with Brownells Daily Defense to talk to you about shooting with handheld lights. All right, why is this important? Why is shooting with a handheld white light important? Well, there's two big reasons that I can see. Number one, there may come a time when you are in a lighting condition where you cannot positively identify the target. Whether it be because it's dark outside and you're in a very dimly lit area, or whether it's because you're indoors and you can't find the light switches, whatever the situation is, there may come a time where you actually have to use the white light to positively identify a potential threat. The other time is how utilitarian a good handheld white light is. It is probably one of the most important tools that you have outside of a firearm for just everyday use. Whether it's walking the dog late at night, whether it's taking the trash out, whether it's searching for your lost car keys in the grass, having a good white light is a very important thing. And then being able to implement or integrate that white light into your shooting is the reason why those two work so well together. All right, so there's a lot of different manufacturers out there. There's a lot of different types, but really what I have seen is I've seen the handheld lights broken down into kind of like two categories, if you will. The first is relatively new, and it's more of the slim profile style. Now these are really nice if you're going to be looking at an everyday carry scenario because they fit flat into your pocket, much like a folding knife. This Surefire Stiletto Pro is a great light. It's got a lot of features. If you want to learn more, go back to some of our other videos on actual white lights. Now, the second type that you can see are more of the traditional tubular models. Now these are great, and there's nothing wrong with trying to carry one of these for an everyday carry scenario, but they are a little bit more bulkier compared to these newer, slimmer profiled versions. Okay, so the types of lights, again, go back and learn all you can from all the other videos talking about brightness and all the different features and all the other stuff, but the one thing I will talk about in this video is the pros and cons of momentary versus constant on. All right, so both of these lights have the ability to go momentary and constant. What's the value between each of those? Well, and I'm going for more of a momentary, which is where it's on and off. The nice thing about that is I'm using the light sparingly. I'm not trying to paint my way through a scenario with the white light constantly on. I'm just using the light intermittently enough to be able to see whatever I need to see. Then, if I need to, I can click on a light and have that nice constant on feature for whatever it might be needed for. Now, when it comes to the actual shooting, you're much better off going with momentary. Should you have to do any type of malfunction clearance or reload, pretty much any type of gun handling, it's nice that when you relieve pressure off the switch, the light turns off. Versus constant on, when you relieve pressure, it still remains on. So that's more of a tactical consideration than anything, but it's one of the biggest reasons why I favor the momentary. All right, next, let's talk about lights that can be, you can use lanyards or these finger rings to kind of help facilitate that. So we talked about, like, okay, what if I need to handle the gun in some sort of manipulation condition? I need to reload or clear malfunction. Wouldn't a lanyard or a finger ring be advisable then? Yes, they can be useful in those circumstances, but I find that the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. I'm much better off either clearing the malfunction using the technique that I know, or stowing the light either back in the pocket or perhaps underarm to clear that malfunction, than trying to use any of those other things. And the biggest reason is that most of the time, if we're using these lights, it's it's not necessarily a planned event. If I'm gonna go and take the trash out, walk the dog, yes, that's a planned event. But if I'm searching, or I'm trying to find, or I'm trying to identify a target, I may not have the time to go ahead and use the lanyard or use the finger ring, so just keep that in mind. The other thing I caution you about is if you are going to use any type of lanyard, make sure that lanyard is somewhat tight. What you don't want is for the light to dangle too far down, because as you start moving this hand, the momentum that is generated from the light hanging can become an issue. All right, so next let's talk about the style or the technique that we would use should I have to use my white light while I'm shooting. The method that I recommend is what is called a high index. Now it gets its name because I'm going to come up high along my neck area. And to be specific, I'm going to actually take the heel of my hand and I'm going to rest it along my jawbone. So it actually kind of forms a nice kind of mating up right here. Now, one of the things that we have to be mindful of is when we do this, be aware of where the bezel is pointing. All right, in this case, the bezel is pointing away from where my eyes are looking. So I want to make sure that even though I'm lining up with my heel, that I keep the bezel pointed at the intended target or target area. Now, the nice thing about the high index is that it gets everything lined up nice and clean. You'll also notice that if you're going to use this technique, you're going to have to engage the target with only one hand. So your strong hand only technique has got to be on point. Now, the reason why I really like that high index is that I'm not fixated or held in place right here. The only time I'm coming here is when I'm actually shooting. Otherwise, when I'm in search mode, I can use this light to look around things, look over things. I can move the light around. I'm not fixated to being only right here and only moving here. I have a lot of options to be able to use. And I want to be able to splash the light in areas that I may not necessarily need to move to clear. So if I can move the light further away from my body to kind of clear around something, that's a much better option than trying to kind of inch my way over to be able to clear. Now, one of the other things that we talk about, if I'm using this light, and I'm more than likely using this light in diminished lighting conditions, which more than likely is going to be an indoor setting, you have a couple of options. You can use the light to kind of splash around, and you can also use the light in an indirect lighting mode, which is where I take the bezel and I point it up into the ceiling. Most residential units are going to have some sort of light colored ceiling that will help to reflect the beam and kind of let that beam cover more area. So you see this in more of a general purpose use. So if I had to move quickly from one side of the room to the other, I could light my way, turn the light off, move, or I can just splash on top, see what I need to see, and then move. Now, I mentioned it earlier, but there are basically 3 modes when we're talking about shooting with a handheld light. The first mode is going to be search mode. All right, so maybe I get up in the middle of the night to go and investigate a disturbance, whatever it could be. You know, knock on the door, maybe it's glass breaking, maybe it's actually my door being kicked in. All right, so now I'm in search mode. And when I'm in search mode, again, I'm using the light to the best of my ability to kind of clear and splash that light, push that light wherever it's most beneficial. Okay? At some point, I might be able to pick up on a target indicator, whatever that could be. Movement, sound, maybe I actually see something. I now need to consider moving the brightest portion of the beam to where the face and the eyes are going to be. Because this is one of the reasons why these lights work so well, is that they're so bright that they can momentarily blind whoever you're shining the light at. Right? And that can do that. It's momentary and it's fleeting, but what it can do for you is allow you the time to start to process what you're looking at. Is it a family member? Is it an intruder? All right. So once you have done that and you've splashed the light in their face, the very next thing that you need to be doing is you need to be looking at their hands. Where are their hands? What are their hands doing? What are their hands holding? Because that's going to be part of the necessary information that you need to determine whether or not deadly force, you know, friend from foe, whatever the case might be. The last thing is shooting. And I'm eventually going to have to come into that high index and engage the target using that high index shooting technique. So when it comes to that, here's the things that I talk about. Number 1, make sure that you maintain good positive pressure so it's not like flickering on and off. You want to make sure that you press and hold. Number 2, make sure that bezel is pointing directly at the target that you are trying to illuminate. Right? And then number 3, and this is one of the nice things, is that because this light is casting a broad beam, part of that beam is going to be covering my sights. And one of the things that I have found in shooting in diminished lighting conditions is my sights, believe it or not, are actually very easy to see. They're either silhouetted really well or they're illuminated really well as a result of the use of white light. All right, so a lot of information, down and dirty. But I recommend that you practice some of these techniques in your own home, of course, in following all dry fire protocols and making sure that everything is safe to do so. But this is a great way to start to learn how to use a white light in your own home before you have to do it someplace else. So if you have questions or comments, or you have had an experience where you needed to use your white light, please feel free to post them down below. Until then, I'm Jeff Gonzalez. Take care and stay safe.